Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you and help you get the maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. If you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We help people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so by giving us a call at 563, nope, that's an autopilot. By giving us, sending us an email, you can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if you want to join us live through Zoom, we have, Zoom has a whole host of phone numbers you can call. And once you call one of their numbers, all you need to do is type in the meeting ID for this first hour of the Mind Shifters now that we're on Zoom. And our meeting ID is 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. And there will be a second hour through the different Zoom ID, and I'll give that near the end of this show so as not to confuse people. So we have plenty of time for comments and questions and discussion. We have been reading through the essays in the book, in the second section of the book titled A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg. And we've been working through the section on freedom from belief. And yesterday I told the story about the bee leaves and the people who traveled around their country only through the use of their bee leaves and how limiting that was and how it prevented them from ever going onto solid ground because of the dynamics of that story. And we've read a number of, I think 3 essays so far under the category heading Freedom from Belief. And I'll just give a reminder before I go back to reading that I encourage people to unmute and speak up if you have a question or a comment. And I view those as an addition and as a boost to the quality of this this offering. So please feel free, even if it seems like I'm in the middle of reading or in the middle of a monologue. This next essay is titled Awakening Through Freedom from Belief. And Christian writes, there is nothing you believe that you didn't first decide to buy into at some point. Even your deepest assumptions about how reality works are viewpoints that you had to establish. Physical reality is a defined context that provides a neutral mirror through which you may experience the nature of your perspectives and beliefs. And as I read that line, and there's so many people I work with that are so thoroughly triggered and upset, and they think they're upset by the words, all events are neutral. And that's simply because they're holding a belief that says this event is not neutral. This situation is not neutral. What this person did is not neutral. And the core of our work here is asking people on a regular basis, inviting ourselves and inviting everyone else who enters this work process to take more and more active responsibility for every dynamic that you experience internally, every upset, every tightness, every tension, every anger, every hurt, every confusion, every feeling of overwhelm, and to understand that you're experiencing it because you're creating it in the dynamic inside your own mind-body energy system.
Dr. Tim?
Yes.
Hi. I know there's only two of us, which means you and me, right? So this would probably be okay to read. I mean, it would be for anyone, but I had a wonderful discussion with a priest friend of mine about my grandson who has these powerful beliefs about whether you're going to be saved or not. And I asked her if she could had anything that she says to people. I'm trying to find it I wrote it down. It was so good. Let's see. Sorry, I had to go back from the Zoom to find it. Okay, here it is. So this is within the realm of belief. And I know you've been reading to us and discussing how we don't need to let that shackle us because beliefs are going to be narrower than living in the question. But for one, my grandson is nowhere near being able or flexible enough to hear that. And yet I don't want to take him away from the faith he has that he thinks is really helping him. So here's what she said. She said, there are two things that seem like contradictions. First, from scripture, and I can't quote which book of the Gospels, There is no salvation outside Jesus Christ. That's the first one. And maybe that's not a quote. Maybe that's just a summation of Jesus is the only way. And then the second one is, and there is no limit to God's mercy. So we can, in a way, we can't put a limit on God's mercy. And there's going to be tension between those statements. And we are being invited to live in that tension. That's sort of what you've been talking about, not saying one is true and one is false. They're both true, but in order to take them as both true, we have to go beyond them somehow. So I just wanted to tell you that I just loved what she said. And there may be a time when my grandson can hear that, and I'm sort of hanging out and just listening to him. My husband and he went for a walk yesterday. He's home for a very short time. And of course, he started right in on my husband, as he did with us on the trip home in the car from Charlottesville yesterday. He's anxious. He's thinking we're going to go to hell. And I tell him, well, maybe we will, but I don't think I believe in a God who'd do that. And then I found, oh, darn it all, I've gotten into it. And sure enough, for the next 15 minutes, my son and I were arguing with him, which was not good. But I can tell that he's loosening up around the edges. He was talking about abortion, for instance, and I said, who likes abortion? Who wants an abortion? But if we're not prepared to help the young single mother who's impoverished, maybe got pregnant by accident or something, if we're not going to help her and support her raising her baby, then we shouldn't argue for the life of the fetus if we can't argue for the life of the child. And that's not my idea. You know, you've heard that. And Charlie, he really heard that. And he said, boy, that makes sense. So you see what I mean? He's beginning to, the edges are beginning to fray a little bit. And I hope it's in a good way. Also, all summer long, he's going to be doing an internship out in Sacramento, California, and not have the input of this very close-knit evangelical church it was founded on the campus of Davidson College, and they've gotten a bunch of kids who are very devout. And he was baptized, even though he'd been baptized as an infant, he was baptized in a big tub of warm water in this tradition. And I said, you didn't really need to do that, did you? And he said, yeah, because I had a choice this time. And I said, fair enough. So he went through this baptism and feels as if he's saved. And I think that's great, except the rest of us aren't, and so forth. But anyway, I just thought I would tell you about that wonderful quote, or it's not a quote, it's just what my priest friend said to me, that I thought was a way of straddling, allowing, living in the question, and dealing with faith. Because those are two faith proclamations or statements, and yet there's life and air that has to come into those because they seem to contradict one another.
Yeah, well, my only response to all of this is it's all just babble, right? It's all just words, and we have given all of these words all the meaning they have for us.
Mm-hmm.
So in this work, what we invite people to do is to tune into what are the energies that you experience inside yourself when you engage in the beliefs you have wrapped up in these various words.
Mm-hmm.
So when you engage in the meanings that you've given these words and pour your mind energy into it, does it leave you feeling calm and safe and secure and loving and compassionate towards yourself and others? Or does it leave you feeling something else? If it's anything less than that, in this work, our invitation is to just back up and try again.
Mm-hmm.
Dietrich Wolzak says, choose again. Here's the title of his his work. Choose again. And since you're the one that's creating every emotion you experience, and that, we invite people to examine that for themselves and observe it directly for themselves. When you experience something less than love, and the scriptures are telling you that God is love, and you're made in the image and likeness of God, that means you're made in love. If you're feeling less than that, choose again.
Mm. That's, I totally agree, and I'm doing that as best I can. But
Well,
when
I would
you,
invite you specifically to do that with your grandson. So instead of generating all of this worry and upset because he's got this path he's on, because he's got some belief that you're going to go to hell, rather than worry about it, just assume, hey, look, he's young, he's intelligent, he's got his ups and downs in life, just like we all do. This is part of his path. Bless his
mm,
heart. I don't have to go on the path with him, and I don't have to go into a panic thinking, oh my gosh, he's never going to come back from this. Like you just said, he's going to spend some time away from these people. He's going to be in another part of the country. He's going to have an internship.
mhm,
Eventually, he'll get out of the college. Eventually, he'll get exposed to other loving and wonderful people
mhm,
who don't have the same belief system that he has, and he'll make his own choices,
mm,
and he'll have his own evolution, his own educational growth process, just like we all have. There's no
mm,
reason for you to go into a tizzy worrying that, oh my gosh, he's in some kind of a cult, or you know, there's no reason for you to get in yourself generating all of that upset and worry and angst,
mm.
because that's your creation in the moment.
I just want to have a dialogue with him. I'm not in a tizzy as far as I'm aware. I just don't want to go silent in my big magnanimous allowing because he wants to have an exchange and I want to be there with him. So you're taking it one extreme or the other. I'm in a middle ground where I'm in the car with this kid. And, I don't know what to say. That's all. I don't know how to care.
Just question, just share with him your own questions. There's no magic for you to say something to change him. You
No,
want to be
not
in a
right.
dialogue with him? Be in a dialogue with him.
Mm,
My only suggestion is that you monitor the emotional state you're in when it's happening,
mm-hmm,
and or how many other people you're going to seek out to try and get their advice for the magic words to say to him, and
mm-hmm,
just notice that that's driven by an energy that's less than loving, less than calm, less than focused, less than centered inside you. And if you work to dismantle that before, during, and after you have conversations with your grandson, your life will go better, and so will his. Right? This work just calls us to be as honest as we can, new and deeper levels of self-honesty every cycle through any of these issues.
mm.
That's what this work is calling us to.
Okay.
And so if you recognize, oh, I'm kind of nervous about how this conversation would go, let me dismantle that nervousness and just be here in the conversation. Let me figure out if what I'm saying is something that I'm saying to try and get the other person to change or have a different experience, and let me choose a different goal for engaging in the conversation with my grandson or anybody else. What would that
Mm,
goal be? I want to connect. Remember how we were talking about this
right,
from the art of nonviolent communication?
right.
We
Mm,
said, here's a new goal for you to have for choosing a conversation. Instead of, my goal is to convince this person that they're right and I'm wrong, or vice versa, or my goal is to get this person to feel calm, or my goal is to get this person to feel angry and hurt the way I'm hurting. Whatever it is, instead of
mm,
those kinds of goals, what if prior to a communication, prior to me saying anything to another person, I choose the goal I want as a result of what I'm about to say to connect with this other person.
That's good.
I want to communicate to them my care about them as a person.
Mm, that's good. Yep. Well, I
And
wasn't.
you and
Uh,
you can see how if you choose that
mm,
prior to engaging with your grandson or anybody else, it's going to dramatically color what comes out of you. It might change it altogether.
mm. Okay, Dr. Tim, that's good. I didn't want to admit that I got a little bit tight in the chest while talking to him, and there's more work to be done on my end.
Well,
Be
if you
from,
go back, right, if you go back and listen to the audio, you can hear it in your voice.
mm,
And I would just encourage you to understand he's young, he's intelligent, he's got you and Tim as grandparents, he's got the ups and downs and pluses and minuses of his life and his family to draw
mm,
on. He'll be fine
mm,
eventually.
mm, mm,
And if you shift, consciously shift the goal you set for yourself as you're about to engage in a conversation with him to this idea that I just want to leave this conversation with him feeling my care and concern for him,
mm. That's
then
good.
watch how it unfolds.
Mm. Yeah, I don't really know how it's going to unfold, and that's okay not to know how it's going to unfold.
I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking about as we listen to Guy Finley and he gets so animated and he sometimes raises his voice and talks with as though there's this sense of urgency and uh, and there are a number of spiritual teachers that do that. Dr. Michael Rice has done that at times, and I'm noticing how while the message is, and you've heard Dr. Michael Rice talk about how many times um, the scriptures repeat the phrase "Fear not, fear
Mm,
not, fear
mm,
not." And yet, what do you think is driving even the spiritual teachers when they say, this is urgent. Now is the time. You better get with this and get off your duff and
that's
etc.
true.
What's
That's
driving that if it isn't
yeah.
fear?
You're right. That's true.
So the more we can monitor within ourselves our own upsets, our own, I mean, one of the truths we have noticed for years now is when we do these reality management worksheets, it's been probably 15, almost 20 years now that I was listening to somebody. Her name is Julie Haverstick, and she lives
Yeah.
right down the street from the
Oh,
intensive center that Michael and Jeannie have. They
right.
don't actively use it right now since the coronavirus restrictions, but she's a person that Michael Rice, I've heard him say she's done more worksheets than anybody on the planet, including him.
Okay.
And he's the one who's created it, right?
Mm,
But I remember at least 15 years ago now, she said that it came to her while she was working with people on these worksheets and doing so many of them herself that every worksheet is really about her.
mm. Oh, yeah.
And it's literally her talking about that literally facilitated a change. Michael decided to change the worksheet process. It used to say, here's the person, in step one, this is the person that did something that my mind is telling me is upsetting to me.
Yeah.
And because of Julie's realization, now the worksheet says, I, Tim, who am love, am feeling this emotion. And then it isn't until the third part of step one that I identify the person that my mind is using as an image to blame for my upset.
Mm.
So a little bit later on in that work, I heard I believe it was Julie Haverstick, who said, you know what, I realize when I work on these worksheets, if I get more honest with myself, whenever my mind is telling me I'm upset with so-and-so because they're being dishonest or because they're being weak or because they're being manipulative, if I back up and look in my life, I will probably find some place where I am violating that very goal. That it's not ever really about the other person.
Mm.
And this is part of how there's a bottom line observation that says, I will never be upset about anything anybody else ever says or does or doesn't do that I think they should, unless I'm still judging myself negatively for doing the same or similar thing.
Mm.
Every worksheet I pick up, it's worth it. I may not be able to find it right away, but it's worth it for me to say, okay, my mind is telling me I'm upset because this person just cut me off in traffic.
Mm.
Or my mind is telling me I'm upset because this person is trying to manipulate me and telling me an untruth. Where in my life am I being rude to somebody?
Mm.
Where in my life am I being less than completely true
Mm-hmm.
to myself or somebody else? It's worth my effort to slow down and examine that
Totally.
and at least do a second worksheet on myself, if not just substitute, and if I've gotten really good at doing the worksheet process, I don't really need to do the worksheet on the other person,
Mm.
because by the time I'm done dismantling my negative judgments against myself for doing the very same thing, I'll have compassion for myself and I'll have compassion for the other person.
That's a great tool right there. That was the third leg of that mind shifter you gave me about my sister. The two other ones were very helpful, and that one was the final one. You had said something like, how have I misused someone or mistreated someone in my mind, if not outwardly? And I thought, well, I would never do what my sister did, but I did things that were misusing of other people.
Yeah, we all have. It's
That
it's
was
it's an
very
amazing piece.
humbling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an amazing piece.
Mm-hmm.
When I wake up and realize that I'm never going to be upset about anything anybody else ever says or doesn't do that I think they should, unless I'm still judging myself negatively for the same or similar thing. And this is just another piece of the puzzle that feeds the truth that Dr. Michael Rice says. He says it's all smoke and mirrors.
Mm.
I'm never upset for the reason I think I am. That's out of the Way of Mastery and the Course in Miracles.
Mm. Yeah, I can feel myself pushing against that because I want to say, well, this was my kid, but I have to make the circle bigger, bigger enough to even include something that would be hard for any parent to accept, almost right to the edge. But nevertheless, it belongs inside that circle of reasoning. It isn't worse in that way than anything else, although I feel like arguing that it is.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
that's what your mind wants you to do,
yeah.
right? But if your mind it has you arguing about something, instantly you can know your mind is lying to you. Because if you're upset, if you're tight, if you're tense, if you're angry, if you're grief-stricken, if whatever it is your mind is telling you in one of those states, it's only at best partially true. And
Mm,
most often it's completely false. And it's like Guy Finley says, that when you listen to fear or any of its stepchildren tell you what to do, the only thing it's ever going to tell you to do is what it is needed for fear to run your life another day.
yeah.
So go ahead and listen to your mind tell you that what your sister did is so horrible and it really demands justice and this and that. And you're going to get hooked into more days of bitterness and vengeance
Hmm.
and more days of upset and grief and more days of generating negative emotional states about something that's happened now often decades ago.
Yeah. In this case, that's true.
And as Abraham says, that I like to quote so often, your most important creation, and you're a creator, right? You're a creator of your life experience. And your most important creation in any given moment is your emotion in that moment.
Mm,
So, what emotion are you generating when you start thinking about your sister and what she did that you judge as so bad and wrong? And what emotion are you generating? How are you feeling in this moment?
mm,
And then make a decision with a breath or two. Do you want to keep doing that since you're the one creating that?
mm. Doggone it, Dr. Jim. I thought I was done with that mind shifter. I'm not done with it.
Yeah, that's us, right? That's us human beings. You've heard me talk before about how at a certain point in my um, work on myself, I realized that the very best use that I can put to any thought that I'm done with something is, oh, this is my mind trying to tell me that I have more work to do on this area,
All right.
right? This is my mind trying to hide from me the work that would be most beneficial for me in this moment. Rather than take it as a truth, because it's always coming through clenched, teeth or tightness,
Mm,
let me see it as false because it's not coming with this uh, peace and calm and compassion. Whatever I have going that's less than loving is my alarm system, or is best used by me as an alarm system to indicate, hey, right now my thoughts are off the mark. Whatever my conscious logical mind is serving up, no matter how well it's drawn out in terms of a sense of logic and whatever structure is so convincing,
mm,
at the very least, if it's not utterly bizarre and wrong, it's at least created on the base of a false assumption.
mm.
And you know what happens every time you build, no matter how fancy and complex a logical structure on a false assumption, as soon as you see the false nature of that assumption, it all falls apart. It's like a high rise built in the sand
Yeah.
at the edge of the waves. As soon as the waves come up, the whole thing crumbles.
Well, we could veer into a whole other discussion about that, but I'll hold it for another time so that you can read if you want to, of course. I mean, this is a radio show.
Right, but this is all, I mean, like, this is exactly what we were reading about. If I believe I'm right whenever I'm upset, the belief is counterproductive. It's false and it's hurtful to continue it.
I
And
get
the
it.
only useful thing for me to do in that moment, if I can become aware of my own upset, is to cancel the belief, is to at least question it, at least ask for ways to look at it differently. And Michael Rice has a lecture you can buy the DVD of. It's titled Course in Miracles, A New Beginning.
Mm,
And you've heard me talk about this several times. In that lesson from the Course in Miracles, they say, listen, get up in the morning and decide what kind of day you would like to have. And then decide to go out and give that away. So let's say that you would like to have a day that's full of joy and respect and mutual love, and so go out and start doing that.
mm-hmm.
Giving that to people, giving that to the situations as they unfold in your life, and make the decision before you go out on your day that you're not going to make any decisions alone.
Great.
Commit to this. I'm not going to make any decisions without asking for guidance from whatever higher power I want. God, light, love, Holy Spirit, doesn't matter.
Mm, that's
And
wonderful.
then as you go about your day, you're going to notice that you don't feel so good when this or that thing unfolds. And in that moment, you can rest assured you have now decided something without asking for guidance, without
Right.
asking for advice.
So, Dr. Tim, going way back to the beginning, when it says, and this is maybe just too much of a veer, but in Christianity, when in the creed it said, or whatever, wherever it says, Jesus died for our sins because we are hopeless sinners. In a way, we're abdicating our creativity and decision making and growing at worst. I mean, I don't suppose people really use that as a way of getting off the hook for your whole life because Jesus is going to do it for me.
Well, I have to take a breath or two here because every time people bring that up, I have to ask them if they understand where that creed comes from.
So it's a group of dogmatists or something who wanted to
Yes, yes,
establish the church.
yes, yes, yes. And so, what better way to have people forget that they're the ones creating their experience of life moment to moment,
Yeah, right.
and
Okay.
forget that they are an extension of nature and the flow of life, just like everything else that's wonderful and beautiful that they see in nature, then to have them start reciting, I'm damaged, I'm broken, and I need the church to save me.
Mm-hmm.
You remember me talking about the Mary Magdala gospel, the gospel of Mary Magdala?
Yeah.
And there's this scroll, and there's only parts of it, but from the parts that they have these three truths that the disciples asked Mary Magdalene because they knew that she was the favorite of Jesus or Yeshua at the time, and they would spend a lot of time alone and go into the deeper teachings, and they knew that Yeshua was sharing things with her that he didn't share with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, "Teach us." And she said, "Okay, well, here's these three things that are in the scroll. The first one is the kingdom of heaven is within you.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is there's no such thing as sin the way it's being taught. And the third thing is make no rules other than what I've already given you." And you might remember I was talking about how I was leading a book club back in the day. And they read that book and they were asking, they're mostly women, there were one or two men, but mostly women. And I kept in the discussion, people kept saying, well, don't you think they suppressed her work just because she was a woman? And I said, no, I don't really think so. Uh, you know, uh, I think they suppress the work because of these three things. If you're trying to create a church, you can't have these three things out there.
Mm,
You can't make people come to you. You can't create all of these rules and all of these rituals and all of these sacraments and things that people have to do, and they have to come to you to do them because you're the
mm,
priest, because you hold the power
mm,
and you have the absolution of sins, and you are, and you're the only one eventually in the Catholic faith. Back when I was in grade school, they were literally telling us, don't even read the Bible because you'll screw it up. And we said, okay, we won't do that. We'll ask the nun. And the nun said, no, no, I can't talk to you about that. You have to ask the priest. So it's not even the nuns were allowed
mm.
to interpret the Bible. Just think of the level of control.
Wow. Wow.
Well, think of the level of control that gets put on a person when they're told you're damaged, you're broken, you're a sinner. And you see that guy hanging up on that cross over there? It's because of you.
Yeah. Mm,
So whenever anybody brings that up and says, Jesus died, I ask, are you aware of where that teaching comes from?
mm,
Are you aware of the history of the church? Are you aware of the atrocities and the violence that was in the Roman culture at the time? Are you aware of the emperor who decided to make a religion part of the Roman Empire?
mm.
Are you aware of what these figures in the church did for power and money and sex? And are you aware of any of that? Are you aware that that's what this comes from, that you're now teaching, or you're being taught, or you're teaching others? And I don't
And
know,
yet,
go ahead.
and yet there are words right directly, supposedly from Jesus's mouth. No one comes to the Father but by me, and Father, forgive me, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. In other words, the only way
Oh,
they can be
okay, but now
acceptable
listen,
is,
let
yeah,
me just stop you right there.
okay.
Do you understand that Jesus never spoke the English language the way you
Oh, of
speak the
course.
English? So then
Yeah.
what is it? So then how do you know? How do you say he said these words and these came from his mouth? No, words like that never came from his mouth.
Wonder what did come.
Yeah, isn't it nice just to wonder what did? And
Well,
then you
Dr.
talk to
Tim,
ancient Aramaic scholars,
this
right?
is okay. This is just the kind of stuff I love to hear about and wrestle with. But this, I cannot do this with my grandson. I have to be
You
in a
don't need to.
very,
You don't
no,
need to.
okay.
You don't need to. And please come back to what we suggested with your grandson whenever you have a conversation
Connect.
with him. That's it. My goal in having this conversation with you is to feel connected. And if you would like to talk about this and you want to ask me what I think about this or that, go right ahead. I'll tell you as honestly as I know how what I think. And if some of the best truths that you've ever resonated with say things like, we don't know what anything is or is for, like the way of
Mm,
mastery
mm-hmm,
and the Course in Miracles. And that, all of these things are just words, which are symbols of symbols.
mm,
And the absolute truth can't be spoken of,
mm,
right? That's the Tao Te Ching. It says, listen, the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. It's the same ancient wisdom across cultures, across centuries. If people are not trying to control you or to get you to join their group, which, by the way, instantly excludes others,
yeah,
if that's not happening, then you don't have these proclamations of, quote, truth, close quotes.
yeah. Thank you for this talk.
And you say, I wonder what Jesus, if you want to start questioning this, you can read Timothy Freak and Peter Gandy's series of books where they dig deep and they go to some of the source material, and you're gonna leave with a whole different set of questions that you can use in your life. And as Rilke would call us to, the poet Rainier Maria Rilke would call us to, we must learn to live in the question, in the questioning state. Why? Because in the moment when a mind can ask a really good question, that same mind is incapable of comprehending the perfect answer. And when I say that, people say, what do you mean? I say, well, think about it. You're in a first grade class, and one of the students in a science lecture, here's where we're having a lecture about how we send rockets to the moon and the International Space Station. And the first grader says, how do they do that? If the thing is so heavy, how do they get? And so you bring in world-class physicists from NASA and rocket science engineers, and they explain it. Is that first grader capable of comprehending any of that? That first grader has no idea about algebra, no idea about quantum physics, no idea about the basic laws of even Newtonian physics. No, that first grade mind is going to have to stretch and grow and have various different life experiences before it's even going to be able to begin to comprehend the perfect answer given by these NASA scientists. Well, the same is true for you and me and anybody else in any moment that our mind goes, I wonder how that's possible. We have to learn to live in the questioning state without demanding an answer. And as Rilke says, then we might live along someday into an answer.
And how we get there is you've given physical suggestions like breathing and softening and allowing, which is almost like a physical thing.
And awakening to the realization that contrary to what I've been taught most of my life, my tightness and tension and upset and anger doesn't mean I'm right. I was literally trained to believe and trained by the people around me to believe that the more angry somebody got, the more right they knew they were and how wrong the people around them were. And as Guy Finley says, my anger doesn't prove I'm right. My anger only proves that in that moment, I don't know what rightness is. So the more I can spend a little bit more of my conscious logical mind energy monitoring my energy system, monitoring the earliest telltale signs of tightness or tension or upset or overwhelm. And then instead of using it as my reassurance that something out there is wrong and needs correcting, but use it as the alarm system to wake me up to say, hey, Tim, there's something you're doing with your mind energy right now that's off the mark. The more I do that, the more I question, how am I creating this tightness or tension? How am I creating this upset? I don't know, for some reason I just flashed, I was reading the book, you've heard me tell this story before, I was reading the book by Paramahansa Yogananda, the book titled The Autobiography of a Yogi. And it was a book that when it came to my attention when I was in college, I had to avoid it like the plague, like the devil is in that book, because I was still in a Catholic college and I hadn't opened up to any of these thoughts that I'm teaching you now or talking about now. And then, many years later, 30, 40 years later, I'm reading the books by Michael Singer, and he talks about how that was one of the most powerful, transformative books in his life. And I said, I should pick that book up. And I picked it up and I started reading, and I think I was about halfway, 2/3 of the way through it, and was just loving it, breezing right along. And all of a sudden, he got to a point where he started talking about one of his gurus basically performing miracles. And I just felt like a gut punch. I literally felt sick to my stomach and I had to put the book down.
Mm,
But by that point in my own work, I realized I'm the one creating that internal
mm,
experience
yeah.
of getting punched in the gut or feeling sick to my stomach or feeling threatened in some way. And so I
Mm-hmm.
put the book down and I did a couple rounds of EFT tapping. A little bit later on, I did some worksheets. A little bit later on, I did some more tapping. And eventually I went back and picked up that book and breezed right through it and loved it
Fantastic.
because I had been cultivating my own awareness that whatever negative emotional states I generate are my own creation.
Mm,
And there's nothing in me picking up a book or even a Kindle version of something on an electronic and seeing, digital signals come across the screen that's going to cause physical sensations in my body. That's
mm,
all an inside job. And because I had been for, you know, at least 15 years at that point, probably maybe 20 some years, training myself to understand that when I'm upset, it's my own internal creation.
mm,
And I had been probably at least 10 or 12 years into the habit of saying, okay, take a breath and turn the focus inside and ask myself, how am I creating this emotion? What am I making this current situation mean?
mm,
And then with the tools of the EFT tapping and the reality management worksheet, I was able to see, oh, this is all because I spent decades, the first 2 decades solid in my life, give myself the first 3 years off for language development, but at least 20 years of my life being drilled into the belief that only this one person who's walked on the earth could ever do miracles like this.
mm-hmm,
And that
mm,
this is the one true religion and the one true person. And anybody else who says that is the Antichrist. And they're trying to drag me into hell with them or whatever. And
mm.
once I recognized that that's what was clashing within me and causing this upset in me, it just faded away. So the more in this work, we encourage people to live in the question and to spend more and more of their conscious mind energy in each day focused on what's the earliest warning sign of tightness or tension or upset.
Yeah.
And then use that as an alarm system to alert you to the fact that something's off in your thinking,
Mm-hmm,
as opposed to what the culture has taught us that when there's a tightness or a tension or an upset or a negative emotion in me, I should scan the external environment to figure out who I should attack, who I should run away from,
mm,
who I should bribe, who I should seduce to try to get them to change so I don't have to feel this upset.
mm.
And
Okay.
that's never worked anywhere near as well for me as the process of recognizing that my upset is my creation.
Mm, mm,
And it's a byproduct of what I'm making the current situation mean. The meaning that I'm giving to things is the only meaning those things will ever have for me. That's right out of the Course in Miracles. I
mm.
give this moment all the meaning it has in my life.
Dr. Tim, where do I, you have told us a gazillion times, where do I find the replay of this? Is this on your website, Mindshifter's Academy?
No, no, this is the best place to find this is wherever you get your podcasts. These days, it's absolutely, I can get it because I get it every day on the Apple Podcast app. If you use Spotify or Amazon or iHeartRadio, they've got a glitch. They quit updating as of May 2nd, and we're working on that. But if you go through any web browser, you go to Apple Podcasts, you don't even have to have an Apple computer or an Apple phone.
Okay.
Go to the Apple Podcast app, or if you have an Apple phone, or on any web browser on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts and search for Mind Shifters Radio, and it'll be there.
Oh, great. Okay.
And this one, will be available within a couple hours, because right after this, I have a meeting, and then I'll have an open half an hour for my lunch, and I'll be editing it and uploading it, and it should be available by 2 o'clock.
Oh, good. Because I think this would be extremely helpful for my son to listen to. He's doing what I do.
Julia, just a minute before we run
Yes.
out of time. Julia asked, is it available on YouTube? It will eventually be available on YouTube. Jeannie gets to that when she has time, and she extracts the audio and then puts it on the Michael Rice's YouTube channel. So yes, it will also be on YouTube eventually, but it'll probably be available more quickly through the Apple Podcast app.
And it's listed by date. Just
Yeah, it's listed under Mind Shifters Radio.
mhm.
And
20.
and since we've had this shift over from Blog Talk Radio, the hours are separate. And so if you look through,
Oh, yeah.
the last few weeks, it's Mind Shifters Radio, 5/19/2025, first hour, Tim Hayes, 5/16/2025, second hour, Dr. Michael Rice. So they're listed individually in hour
Okay.
segments.
I see.
You were saying something about your son?
He and I were in the car with Charlie, and we both did the same sort of thing, but he gets hotter under the collar than I do. He hasn't used the tools, but I think this discussion would be really helpful to him.
Well, and I think the biggest thing for both of you is the idea of,
Connecting.
well, it's just relaxing and
Yeah.
not generating anxiety and worry, and then
Mm,
believing your mind as it wants to tell you that it's about your grandson,
yeah. Right.
right?
Now,
It,
Dr.
it
Tim,
Go ahead.
sorry, I notice on the bottom of my screen it says share. Well, of course.
Share what? What
Good
are you
question.
talking about right now with the thing we're talking about
Yeah,
on
no, I
Zoom?
mean, there's a little box at the bottom of the screen.
What screen? What are you looking at?
I'm on an iPhone, and at the
Okay.
bottom of the Zoom screen, you have
All right. So it says
participants.
it's
Yeah,
in the Zoom, right?
it's in the Zoom,
Right.
and it says share. If I push it, I might lose you, so okay, I'm pushing it. Only the host can share. Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. This is
okay.
about if you're going to share your screen.
Oh, sharing a screen. Okay,
Right.
got it. All right, figuring out the software here. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for calling. It always makes, as I said, these hours are at a premium quality whenever anybody raises a question, shares a comment, etc. So we thank you for that. And I will mute you so we can wrap up for today. I'm grateful to everyone who's listening, live or on the archives. And as I mentioned, I will share with you that the second hour today will be through Zoom with Dr. Michael Rice. And that Zoom ID is 846-1382-4189. 846-1382-4189. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and